Here to go through the papers with me, Albie Amankona, political commentator, co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism. Albie, good morning.
Good morning, Rosie.
So we hear this first idea about the push for growth from the Chancellor, building homes on the green belt, this new dash for growth. Are you convinced by what you've heard?
I would like to see the Labour government succeed where the Conservative government utterly failed. Look, this isn't the first time a government has spoken about planning reform, which is ultimately what Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves are talking about when they talk about planning reform, that this grey belt idea is not a new idea. I think in 2014, Liz Truss spoke about building 1 million homes on the green belt. There have been various incarnations of planning reform since then. None of them actually got through the Conservative Parliamentary Party because of trouble in the green belt. And now actually the Labour Party has a lot of those seats in the southeast of England, which you would call those green belt seats, which are against this sort of planning reform because they don't want new housing built in their areas. So I commend Labour for trying. The question is, will they succeed where the Conservative Party failed?
Yeah, and what do you think?
I think they've made such a play of this. If they didn't deliver on this issue, it would be a huge problem for them. And if we actually look at the composition of their large majority, yes, we know they've got a majority of over 170 seats. No one is denying that. It's actually quite shallow. So that would indicate to me that if Labour don't actually deliver on their manifesto commitments, there's absolutely no reason why the electorate in 5 years' time might not just say, well, actually, sod you, we'll vote for someone else, and they might actually have a much more majority or be out of government.
Yeah, I mean, the pledges to build 1.5 million homes in 5 years. They weren't sort of shouting about that on the campaign.
It's certainly something which people who care a lot about housing have been quite focused on. And I'm one of those people. And it's actually an issue that impacts lots of young people. Rosie, you and I are around a similar age. And if you actually look at the vote share of 18 to 24-year-olds and 25 to 34-year-olds, almost 50% of us voted for the Labour Party. Now, if the Labour Party does not deliver for that generation of people, there's absolutely no reason why that population of people would not vote for another party at the next general election, perhaps a party like the Reform Party, who is speaking a lot about housing and issues that are important for younger people, for example. The Labour Party really has to not make the same mistakes of the Conservative Party. And ultimately, the Conservative Party did not deliver on the manifesto commitments that they made to the British people in 2019, and they've just been voted out of government.
Yeah, well, the Conservative Party today, according to several of the papers this morning, I'm looking inside The Guardian, the Conservative Party board is expected to meet today to begin drawing up plans for a leadership contest to replace Rishi Sunak after that devastating defeat. And the sentiment running through, well, the paper on which she wrote that scathing letter and The Guardian, so both sides of the political divide, is that Suella Braverman is found that letter has meant she's losing favour.
Yes, we are seeing a really quite extraordinary intervention from Danny Kruger, who was the leader of the right-wing group of Conservatives, the New Conservatives, and he essentially is saying, well, actually, instead of backing Suella Braverman, who he backed last time, he was quite a key ally to Suella Braverman in the 2022 leadership campaign. Danny Kruger has said that actually, no, he doesn't think Suella is the person for the job, that the person for the job is Robert Jenrick, who is the former immigration minister. Now, he resigned from government despite being a key Sunak ally over what he perceived to be inaction on taking the necessary steps in order to get the Rwanda plan through. Of course, the Rwanda plan has now been killed by Keir Starmer, I think, in his first 24 hours of government. But Danny Kruger's intervention is an important one because it indicates to me that of the 121 Tory MPs that are left, if Danny Kruger is suggesting that he can't support Suella Braverman, who else could support Suella Braverman if not Danny Kruger? And does that mean that her leadership plan is essentially dead before it's even begun?
Albie, who would you like to have a go at it?
I think look, I'm very much an anyone but Suella type of person. I can't stand Suella Braverman. I think she is not only inflammatory, but she is totally impotent when it comes to actual delivery. I don't know one single policy thing that she delivered when she was the Home Secretary. So honestly, I don't mind who the next leader is, as long as it's not Suella Braverman. And that is actually a feeling that I hear a lot of people express when we talk about who want to be the next leader of the Conservative Party. I honestly don't mind who the next leader is, as long as it is not Suella Braverman, because I think she would be totally wrong for the future of the Conservative Party.
And how long a contest do you want? Is there a risk that you do this quickly and it gets rushed and you don't have the right person in place?
I think we have to take our time when it comes to the leadership contest. Personally, I think we need to be looking at having a proper leader, maybe just after the conference. Now, I understand from what I hear that the Prime Minister doesn't want to stick around for that long. And I think if that is the case, that's fine. Look, if Rishi's heart is not in being the leader of the opposition and he doesn't feel that he can effectively counter a Keir Starmer Prime Minister, then that is fine and fair enough. And then we should just simply install a caretaker leader for that time, someone like David Davis or Ian Duncan Smith, for example. But I think we should have our leader that's going to take us forward for the next 5 years, sometime around the Conservative Party conference, preferably after the Conservative Party conference. And maybe the Conservative Party conference can be the time where the leaders sort of paraded in front of the membership. It might actually make people want to go to conference instead of not going this year, which is obviously a huge
it's going to feel
fundraising event for the party.
it's going to feel very different this year. There is always a post-election inevitable conversation that comes up, and that is about our voting system. But I was interested this morning, inside the Eye, Sir John Curtis is writing, first past the post voting system is failing democracy. Now, he knows this point. It's been hammered home lots over the weekend. But he said, how can a party with just 12% of the vote end up with 71 seats, whereas a party that won rather more support, 14%, secure 5. He says, for the first time since 1923, more than 100 MPs were elected under something other than the Conservative or Labour banner. These are the signs of a system no longer working as its defenders claim. Do you agree with him?
I'm a supporter of first past the post, even if I do take the point that Sir John Curtis is making, that actually it doesn't necessarily always throw up proportional results in the same way that a proportional representation system throws up. Now, we have this conversation about electoral reform as if we didn't have a referendum on electoral reform. I think it was in around 2011. Now, we had a referendum on electoral reform in 2011. It lost the referendum. And actually, what I think is quite interesting about the AV debate, the alternative vote debate, is the people who organised the campaign against the alternative vote were the same people who ran Vote Leave. So I always think it's quite interesting when you have these people who support the Reform Party, support the Brexit Party, supported UKIP, say, oh no, we want to have electoral reform, when actually the same people that caused Brexit caused the alternative vote to be dead in the water. So I'm not really sure whether or not it's time to have another debate and have another referendum on an alternative voting system, but it actually wasn't that long ago that we had a referendum on a different voting system, a more proportional voting system, not proportional representation, but something that would keep the constituency link, which is one of the good things about first past the post. We had that debate, it lost. I think we've got to move on in the same spirit as we talk about the referendum on Scottish independence. It's a once-in-a-generation thing. We had that referendum. It's not been that long. I don't think the problems that Britain has are not caused by the voting system. They're caused by politicians and political parties that don't deliver for the British people.
Should we look at some political problems in Spain? In Barcelona, lots of the papers have got this. There are these incredible photographs of protesters with water guns spraying tourists. The Telegraph says residents wielding water pistols and tourism kills city banners are hurling insults at foreign holidaymakers. How would you feel if you'd gone to Barcelona and you found yourself subject to a huge protest and, well, I think it would be fairly unpleasant.
Oh, I'd be absolutely furious. I think one of the things I was reading in the story that I found astonishing was there were some people having dinner and it sounded like as if there were these protests going on in front of them, and they felt so uncomfortable that they had to leave. Now, if I was having a dinner in Barcelona and someone squirted a water gun at me, I'd probably pick up my glass of sangria and throw it at them. I'd probably get into a fight with the protest. Well, not a fight, but you know what I mean. I'd be getting involved. I'd be like, don't if you're going to chuck water at me, I'm going to chuck sangria back at you. I think these sorts of anti-tourist protests are absolutely extraordinary. And obviously, and quite often I get quite frustrated when I hear about people who live in areas where tourism is the main driver of economic growth, getting annoyed when tourists go to those places. It happens in places in the UK, places like Cornwall, places like the Isle of Wight, places like Norfolk, where
Devon,
lots of people go down from Devon. They call them DFLs, down from London. And I don't think we're quite at the stage where people are using water guns against.
I don't think the residents of Salcombe are spraying.
They're not
tourists.
yet, but who knows? Maybe Salcombe is next. Maybe Cowes is next. If Barcelona isn't safe, maybe none of us are safe. But the point is, these parts of the world where tourism is a key driver of economic growth rely on tourism for their cities to be places which are prosperous. And I think during the pandemic, what we saw is a lot of these tourist hubs really suffer, and they did quite a lot to try and get tourists to come back. Now they're annoyed that tourists have come back. They've got to make their minds up, and I think it'd be quite difficult in a lot of places to replace the business, enterprise and commerce that tourism brings. So these people in tourist hotspots should be careful what they wish for.
I'm with you. Albie, thank you so much. Albie Amankona, political commentator.